and welcome to the Tuesday, January 24th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. We start every meeting with an invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Today we have Pastor Stuart McWilliams joining us from Fellowship of the Rockies to lead us in an invocation. Please stand. So we have done items number 1 and 2. Item number 3.
Item number 3 is staff emergency items, and I'm unaware of any staff emergency items.
Item number 4.
Item number 4 is changes, postponements, and notice of the next meeting. I'm unaware of any changes or postponements to today's agenda, and the next meeting will be January 31st at 9:00 a.m.
Item number 5.
Item number 5 is the consent calendar consisting of items 5A1 through 5H1.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on anything on the consent calendar? No one online? And hearing none, I will bring that up here for a motion or discussion.
Move to approve item 5A1 through H1.
Second.
That has been moved and seconded. I will call the roll. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
And Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The consent calendar passes 5-0. Item number 6.
Item number 6 is comments by elected officials and commissioner liaison reports.
Excellent. Today I'm going to Okay, we'll go in normal order. Commissioner Gonzalez does need to leave to attend an event on our behalf I'm sure he'll tell us about. But I was going to go out of order, but we will stick with our regular order because we're moving along pretty quickly here. Commissioner Williams.
Yes, good morning. So I do have a 20-minute speech planned. Just teasing, Commissioner Gonzalez. Actually, my calendar is fairly light this week. I do have some constituent meetings and constituent phone calls. And then yesterday we did have the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Legislative Committee and also the Board of Retirement that I'm a liaison to. And then Thursday and Friday, if I'm correct, we have CCI Legislative Committee meetings. And it's kind of like in Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford, that rock is starting to roll and we're starting to run because we're trying to either keep up with it or not get run over by it. So we've been watching some Harrison Ford lately. Thank you. That's all my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everybody. This morning I attended the UCCS Economic Forum breakfast and wasn't able to see the entire briefing, but got to see about half of it. But it was great networking and kind of meeting with several people from UCCS and also the new Economic Forum chair, and that was Dr. Craig. It was nice to meet him. Last Thursday, attended the Joel Uhas farewell, and several of my fellow commissioners were with me there, and that was a great farewell for his send-off moving to Pittsburgh. Also, tonight, I'll be attending the Pikes Peak Community Foundation event at El Pomar. That, I think, will be a good event. That's introducing the new CEO of the Community Foundation. And then tomorrow, I'll be departing for California for a visit at the Hoover Institute, a business meeting with Angel Flight West, and then attendance at the Federalist Society Western States Conference. And then one last item that I have is I just was officially appointed by CCI to the Homeland Security Advisory Committee, the state committee, an advisory committee for Homeland Security for catastrophic events. It's a planning committee that helps the state get ready for big, dangerous events that may take place in Colorado, but I'm now appointed to that board, and I'm the CCI representative to that board. That's all I have this morning.
Thank you, Commissioner Vanderwerf. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Several things over the next couple of days, and starting off with today, I do have to leave early right after our commissioner comments to represent the county at an Air Force Academy. The expansion of their facilities, large scale, and as I see our economic development director is here, has highlighted funding through our private activity bonds, which we do. Normally we do this through Housing Authority and some affordable housing projects, but in this case, some facilities as well. There's a different set of money and projects that this can go to. Doesn't utilize any of the county dollars, doesn't put us on the hook for any type of liens or anything to the bonds, but the fact that they communities, whether it's the housing and the separate entities, or in this case, the Air Force Academy is able to use these bonds, I believe over the course of the 25 to 30 years, will save them approximately $17 million. So this is something that I'm very proud of as a community and county. We're able to provide this type of support for our local entities, and especially something as big as one of our military installations. Tomorrow we do have a Region 16 Opioid Council. I believe Commissioner Geithner will give a little more information about that. Also tomorrow afternoon, a report advisory committee I will participate in. Then always important for us, especially during the legislative session, is our meetings that we have with our Colorado Association of Counties, CCI. They'll have meetings, I believe, all day or all morning for sure tomorrow, and I believe Friday as well, and I will be participating in that. I do hope be able to come back in time, but we are going very fast. If I do not get back in time, I'll just make a couple comments now on the work session. I do appreciate the work on this. In terms of the one that's listed as Project Garnet, that one is, I believe, going to be presented, and we'll just mention that it's going to be a property tax. For people that don't understand, when it's property taxes, urban renewal, generally, there's there's a lot of allowances that the urban renewal and the cities can do, can take us to binding arbitration, things like that. So usually negotiations are difficult, but it's a project that looks like it will bring in a lot of business for the community. The other one, Gold Hill Mesa, it is the type of project, as when we talk about urban renewal, that makes sense in terms of getting projects going and renewals. That's an area that, as we know, of any of the contamination clearly requires some sort of investment to improve those areas before they can be developed. So I do appreciate that project is in line of what we normally talk about. A lot of discussions about blight and how this absolutely looks like that's the kind of project that this was made for. So just those general comments, and I look forward to hopefully coming back in time to catch at least portions of that discussion later. Thank you, and I do have to get up to the academy. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. So good morning, and lots of stuff going on this week. Very busy yesterday. Participated in the community outreach meeting with Chair Bremer, and that was my first one there, so it was a great opportunity to learn more about that group, and looking forward to the many plans that they have to get even more engaged with our community. Yesterday also participated in the ESA meeting. Tomorrow, as was mentioned by Commissioner Gonzalez, we do have the Opioid Council. Like to remind folks that is a council that is specifically set up to look at how to spend dollars that came from the opioid settlements. These are not tax dollars. These are dollars that came from pharmaceutical companies and such. And so that will be utilized specifically to combat those impacts in our community. Looking forward to working on the 2-year plan on how to spend those funds. Also, as mentioned, CCI has steering committee meetings, excuse me, both Thursday and Friday that I will be participating in, along with the legislative breakfast that's at the Capitol early Friday morning, just as an opportunity to be able to interact with our legislators and talk to them about upcoming pieces of legislation and things that we might have concerns about, and just build some relationships with those folks to be able to have that open dialogue as those come forward during the session. And in between all of that, I have a lot of constituent meetings this week as well. I also want to give a huge shout out to our constituent services staff member here at the county, Rebecca Rudder, and many of our community members may have heard from her. Rebecca has just been such a tremendous help with, as we are going through all of these meetings and have all of these things going on, helping us to make sure that we can get back to constituents very quickly and make sure that they get resolution to any concerns that they have. So it's always great to have some help on that front so that we can get things done faster. So just a huge thanks to Rebecca, and really grateful for the work that she's doing with us.
Well said, Commissioner Geithner, and I will second the kudos to that entire constituent response team. I want to start off my comments this morning by wishing one of my colleagues a very happy birthday. It is Commissioner Williams' birthday. And then I also believe that, although she's not sitting on the dais with us today, I believe that one of our clerks to the board, Bridget, is also celebrating a birthday this week. So happy birthday to her, and great thanks for all who help us out in getting the county's work done here. This week, I also have the Pikes Peak Community Foundation reception for Margaret Dolan this evening. Tomorrow is an incredibly busy day with a Board of Health meeting all morning. Middle of the day, Colorado Springs Urban Renewal Authority, and then wrapping up the afternoon with the Pikes Peak Workforce Center Consortium Board as well. Then later this week, I will also be attending an HOA meeting in my district and speaking with constituents at a reception there. It happens to be in close proximity to one of the URA sessions we'll be working on today. So looking forward to answering any questions I can at that tomorrow. And then also, I will be attending a welcome reception for D11 Superintendent Michael Gall that's hosted by Pikes Peak United Way on Friday. And with that, are there any elected officials online wishing to speak? And seeing none here, we will move on to item number 7.
Item number 7 is community service organization reports, and there are none.
Item number 8.
Item number 8 is public comment on items not scheduled on the agenda. This is the public's opportunity to speak on an item that's not scheduled on today's agenda. And Madam Chair, I did see Mr. Martin sign in ahead of time.
Excellent. Please come forward, state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes. Would you speak into the mic, sir, so we can capture what you're saying?
Testing. Thank you.
Okay, we are back to land use issues, which seems to be my permanent topic. There are no rights guaranteed in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights as far as property rights are concerned. In contrary, there are two provisions in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. One is that the government must adequately reimburse a property seized by eminent domain. You must reimburse your citizens after you take their property. And that no citizens shall be subject to a subjective or arbitrary law or rule. In other words, there can't be just making it up, I feel. When you quasi-judiciously place RV storage units, kennels, cluster homes, multifamily, rezones of rezones, hotels, commercial property next to existing large lot residential areas, that is not in the master plan, it is not in the land use code, and it's very arbitrary and subjective to say that I feel that these are congruent with the surrounding property. That is not what is legal, and it's not what your citizens want. I urge the commission to use land code tables to make these decisions. Those tables are in the land use code. Use them, please. We are not in a housing crisis. Over the last approximately 20 years, we've had a consistent 1.5% growth. This is both manageable and controllable with the existing policies that are in place. As far as affordable housing in Colorado Springs has never been an affordable place to live. The truth, though may it be tough, is that there are many well-qualified, hardworking, retired military in the area, which continue to make employment ultra-competitive and also hold wages down. When I see the government use subject matter experts throwing figures and graphs and giving those to the public, my BS meter starts to get pegged. My favorite class in college was statistics. My favorite book was How to Lie with Them. When I see a ridiculous Code of the West placed on the county commissioner's site, on the county board site, my BS meter is further pegged. That code is threatening to all your rural residents, suburban and rural residents. It's threatening to us. I've run out of time once again. We have lots of time in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Do we have anyone else wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda? Is there anyone online? No. Okay. With that, we will move along to item number 9.
Item number 9 is the called up consent calendar, and there are no items called up.
And item number 10.
Item number 10 is department and committee reports, non-action items. 10A, upcoming changes to Department of Human Services Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP. Stacy Quiddick-Russell, Executive Director, Department of Human Services.
Good morning. Let me try to work the technology. Okay. Stacy Quiddick, Executive Director, Department of Human Services. Thank you so much for allowing me to come today just to brief you on some of the issues that are happening. Oh, okay, thank you. What would I do without Christina? We have some major changes that are coming to those that we serve, and we wanted to share those with you and anybody that may be watching today. Okay, so SNAP is only one of the major programs that the Department of Human Services offers, but it's a very important program. It's all about feeding people, which is near and dear to my heart. The need in our region and across the state increased significantly during the pandemic, and unfortunately, it is not decreasing. Just a little side note that Medicaid, Health First Colorado is the most access program at DHS, which serves approximately 215,000 individuals at any given time. And SNAP follows that. And we'll talk about numbers in just a moment. So this graph indicates the number of cases that we have at the Department of Human Services for SNAP and the number of individuals. So on average, last year, our county served 38,241 cases and more than 77,000 individuals. A case could be one individual or it could be a family of 10. It just varies greatly. And you'll see that it has consistently increased over the years. So SNAP helps many individuals. A lot of the people that we serve are senior citizens on fixed income, getting very minimal amount of support in general times. And one thing to know is that SNAP benefits can carry over for up to a year. So anybody that receives SNAP benefits, they can save those and those can carry over. They don't have to spend their full allotment within the month that they receive them. And that's important for this current situation that we're in. We'll talk more about that in a moment. The amount that somebody is allowed varies greatly. It depends on household composition, income, if it's earned income or unearned income, other expenses, and all of that plays into the situation. And SNAP recipients must recertify their eligibility every 6 months, which is different from some of the other programs that we offer. So this is a timeline. At the beginning of the pandemic, states were allowed the opportunity to apply for SNAP emergency maximum allotments. So just in general, quick overview, what that means is that a family, given their income, the number of people in the household, their expenses, perhaps they are only eligible in general for $100 a month. Max allotment based on the public health emergency allowed anybody within a state that was approved to receive the maximum amount possible, income notwithstanding. So if they were eligible, they would receive the maximum that anybody would be eligible within that category. And I'll give you some examples of that in just a moment. So with the changes, with the passing of the omnibus in late December, that decoupled the maximum allotment with public health emergency. We thought that the ending of the public health emergency would be the ending of the maximum allotment, but the omnibus changed that, and so the end of maximum allotment will be at the end of February. So again, this speaks to the things that maybe cause variation in the amounts that someone is eligible for. With maximum allotment, if somebody already was eligible for the maximum amount within their category, they received an additional $95. So what that means is that every single household will be reduced by a minimum of the $95 just based on simple math, but many families it will be much more. So here's an example. In this example, a household of 4 that had earned income of a little over $4,000 and they had minimal standard deductions. In normal times, they would be eligible for $69 of SNAP. With maximum allotment, they are receiving $870 of SNAP benefits each month. And at the end in February, that will be the last month they receive $870, and they will be now receiving $69, just as one example. So wanted to share some of the communications that have been going out. This is obviously going to hugely impact those that we serve and others, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But since the beginning of the pandemic, when maximum allotments started, we've been notifying every individual. Just remember, this is temporary. This increased amount is temporary, and it will be going away. Since then, since we've learned that it's now, everybody that walks in our door, anybody that calls, we let them know the date that it will be ending. We've put posters up around the lobby. We've done outreach to local media outlets for additional coverage, and the state will be sending out individual letters to all recipients shortly. Those have not gone yet, though. We hope this week. As I mentioned, this is a huge impact to those we serve, and we do anticipate increased calls, increased folks walking through the lobby. We have 13 staff right now at the Department of Human Services that manage the customer service line, and prior to this crisis, last year they received over 30,000 phone calls and managed those. We anticipate it will be much more. Last year, they served 58,000 individuals just walking into the lobby. And what you need to know is most of the work that can be done electronically, and most of it is. So these are just people needing extra assistance or needing to actually visit with someone about questions or concerns. The state does plan to establish, excuse me, a toll-free phone line, but that's not yet set up yet either. DHS has multiple locations, but obviously the Citizen Service Center is the main location, but we do have, we can support and serve our community in these other areas as well. And we obviously cannot do this alone and do not do this alone. We have amazing community partners that support food insecurity within the community, and these are just a few of them. So just briefly, I wanted to touch on the economic impact. As you may know, for every dollar spent in SNAP benefits, it's estimated that $1.67 of economic activity occurs. And so this graph is very important and telling to me. So last year, we administered over $20 million a month in SNAP benefits to the community. The economic impact of that is closer to 35 million. And the estimation is that at least $6.9 million a month will not be coming to our community because of the decrease in the SNAP. So it will definitely be impacting our local businesses that have been receiving and, you know, benefiting from those dollars. It'll impact the families, obviously, and it's just going to be it's going to be a huge impact throughout the community. So wanted everybody to be aware of that. We are working diligently trying to get the word out, trying to make sure that our partners are prepared, because a lot of our nonprofits in the community will be probably stretched trying to support and fill in the gaps for those families that struggle. Do you have any questions?
Commissioner Williams.
The first question is, what was the percentage for the economic impact to the community again? 69%?
No, the estimate is it'll be about 30% that decreases. It's $6.9 million per month.
And can you go back to the chart where it showed how much their benefits are on average cutting? It was like 800 to 70. It was one of your first or second charts.
Let's see. I don't know. Is this the chart you were looking at? This is the number
No,
of,
go back one more,
one more?
maybe.
Oh.
No?
I'm not sure which chart. I have this one. Which one do you think?
It was the one with the little family on it. There you go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is the example of the family.
Okay, so I think I missed percentages in elementary school, but that is huge.
This is huge. The issue with the emergency maximum allotment is that some families only qualified for a little bit. Some families already qualified for the $870 because they had lower income in the household, but everybody was bumped up to the maximum no matter what their circumstances were. So they were bumped to the maximum, whether they see previously this family would have been eligible for $69, and with maximum allotment, they received $870 per month.
So this is a federal government issue, I will state that. And while I disagree with the amount of money the federal government spent on COVID, I think it costs a lot of inflation. This specific group of individuals who are in poverty to not even go down in steps or say, okay, this month we're going to cut it by 10%, next month we're going to cut it by another 10%. I mean, if I went home today and looked at my budget and had to cut that much money out of my food budget, that would be incredible if I still had 2 children at home. And it's a need, you know, we obviously need to go back to what it was before, but I guess it's a little bit, I think, short-sighted of Congress, and not that they do anything long-sighted anyway, to not have planned last year and started reducing them on a monthly basis. And so I will comment that they should have worked on that. And also certainly as I'm speaking and this is going out on media, I would certainly encourage everyone in Colorado Springs to help these food pantries, Care and Share, Tri-Lakes Cares, Mercy's Gate, the other ones that were mentioned here. We're all going to have to step forward to help these families who are going to struggle for several months.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Well said. I do have a quick question. In terms of, you said eligibility must be reapplied for every 6 months. Has reapplying and recertifying that eligibility, did that come to a halt during this COVID emergency order as well? Or have there been families that have moved on and moved off during this season?
Yes, so that's a really good question. And for Medicaid, it was halted that once somebody was on, they were not allowed to be removed, so they did not have to recertify, except unless they moved out of state, asked for to be removed or death. So, but with SNAP, it did continue, and there is always some sort of churn. People come on, people go off, but this is definitely, the need has continued. We get new applications all the time for people that have never been on before. And times are hard, and with the people, so one of the challenges I think is with the elderly population, it's a lot of paperwork to apply for SNAP. And so for some folks that are only going to get $26 a month, they don't find the value in it. But with maximum allotment, there seemed to be more interest because it was going to be more than $26. And so people, like I said, people that have never been on before applied during this time period.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions? Commissioner Geithner.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Obviously, you know, this will be some challenges, people getting readjusted to some of these numbers, but as tough as this is going to be for some people, I'm just very, very grateful that we've got a ton of private partners that's going to help us pick up a lot of this challenge. And I just have to remind people of the other challenge. And I know it's not good to do math from the dais here, but between 2019 and 2021, SNAP grew $60 billion. And the federal debt is $31.4 trillion. In 2022, the deficit was $1.375 trillion in a single year. The federal government is spending 30% more than it's bringing in despite record revenues. 2022 was the highest revenue receipts in the history of the United States at $4.9 trillion, and they spent over $6 trillion. This is not sustainable. And right now, the federal debt is over $85,000 for every man, woman, and child in the entire United States. So as tough as this is going to be, if the federal government wants to not default on its borrowed money, it's going to have to be this and a lot more, because this is a $60 billion reduction in a $1.3 trillion per year overspending. This is a drop in the bucket for what the federal government is going to have to do in years going forward to bring their spending challenges back in line. So I think it's going to be tough on a bunch of people, but it becomes necessary, and it was designed predominantly for COVID, as I understand it, and we are out of that crisis at this time. It's important to get back to these normal numbers, but the federal government actually needs to do an enormous amount in SNAP and in a lot of other programs to get their spending in line, because without that, we're going to default, and then everybody will suffer in giant ways. The economy will really suffer. So I am hopeful the federal government will be responsible going forward in their spending, and we'll see how that goes. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. That there's a real difficulty in talking about these two topics together. I think it's probably safe to say none of us wants to see anyone go hungry, and especially not children. And at the same point, we do have to deal with those economic realities, as Commissioner Vanderwerf mentioned. And so I'm grateful for the work that you have done to keep people informed that this was temporary and that they should be aware of that, because I think that will go a long way for planning, so that it's not just I woke up today and realized that my entire budget has changed. Hopefully there is more awareness than that, thanks to your team in doing that. But I too, recognize that it's unsustainable. And while we talk about the economic impact to our community, at the same point, that is exactly why we are seeing such high inflation. It's a big circle of now it's harder for folks to be able to afford to live. And so I do agree that it is the right step at this point, but it is still difficult. And I also agree that it becomes incumbent upon all of us to do what we can with our nonprofit organizations. That's a great place for us to all be contributing, and allows for those who are able to be able to contribute, and not just through those nonprofits, but certainly churches and all kinds of individual ways, helping friends, helping families in a way that truly is a community involvement. So really hope that we will see an outpouring of that from our community, but know that this is a difficult thing, and it is always a very difficult balance when we talk about the reality of what it means for folks who are in need of these programs, and yet the difficulty that it is in. There is an economic reality in this world that we all have to live with. But I appreciate you taking the time to come and share this with us. Again, thank you to your team for doing everything that you can to make sure these families are aware of what's coming, so that they can best hopefully look for those other resources in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just wrap it up with a couple of summary comments as well. First of all, thank you for being here to put this really on very public record. Just another tool that we have to make sure that these families and others are getting reached. This was originally agendized, I think, as a report to us in an informal meeting, and I think it was it really is a benefit to our community to have had you here to present it like this today. So I know that's a little extra effort. Thank you to you and your entire team. Chris, Karen, Christina, yourself, Andrew, I know there's a lot of crossover and cross-training there that people are jumping in where they can to help with this program. So thank you very much to the staff that continues to try to assist those who need it most in our community, and for really being their advocate and in a in a judicious way of administering the help that we're able to do so, and then in working with our partners as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other department and committee reports? Seeing none, item number 11.
Item number 11 is the addendum, and there are no addendums today.
Item number 12.
Item number 12 is the executive session, and there is no request for executive session.
Okay, with that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting momentarily, but we will, I believe we'll take a quick 5-minute transition break to the work session, if that works for everyone. Does that work? Okay, with that, I'll call this 9 a.m. meeting adjourned. Thank you for your patience. We will now call to order this work session as agendized. Crystal Latier.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I will ask for that PowerPoint to be pulled up for us if we could. As a reminder, I'm Crystal Latier, Executive Director of Economic Development here in El Paso County. For the work sessions, it's important to note that these are non-voting items. So this is a informational work session only. So we'll be presenting information today. What that will look like is there will be a presentation from your El Paso County staff, both myself and your Chief Financial Officer, Nikki Simmons, regarding the request for the tax increment financing. We will then call up the Executive Director of the Colorado Springs Urban Renewal Authority, as well as the project team members to give some more information regarding the request and the project. For work session number 1, we are hearing a request known as Project Garnet. Thank you very much. Project Garnet is an urban renewal area located in Commissioner District 3. It's comprised of one parcel, which equates to approximately 88 acres of land. What is planned for this development is 500,000 square feet of a high-tech manufacturing facility with the potential for a second phase at equal 500,000 square foot facility. This is another site location map so that you can see this is, again, Commissioner District 3 in the Rock Rimmon area just west of I-25. This project is requesting 100% of the county's property tax mill levy. There is no sales tax component of this request. We heard comments from Commissioner Gonzalez earlier this morning regarding how state statute works for the county's property tax. At this time, we'll bring up the Chief Financial Officer, Nikki Simmons, to speak specifically to the financial impacts of the request.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer. This property is planned to be developed in possibly 2 phases. The first phase, based on the projections, would be a $500,000 or 500,000 square foot manufacturing property expansion. And then depending on how things go for that business owner, there's a possibility of phase 2. So this is the first time you're seeing a URA projection in 2 phases. And the first phase of it would be over the first 25 years. The second phase does not extend that time frame. It's still that same 25 years. And so you just don't see it starting to develop those property tax increments until year 8 versus year 4 with the first phase. But the size of those 2 expansions is relatively the same. So for the first phase, we anticipate being able to collect the base of $121,213. We currently collect about $4,066 on that based on our current mill levy, which we're in a temporarily reduced mill levy situation. So as always, your county staff has recalculated those numbers, taking out our temporary mill levy reductions. So on the next sheet, you'll see the recalculated numbers. So we anticipate the first year the property tax would be implemented, the TIF would be implemented is in 2026, where we would anticipate approximately $93,000 of a TIF. Over the 25 years, phase 1 would generate $4.9 million for an average of $198,000 per year over that 25-year period. Then if phase 2 were to be implemented, we would first see that in approximately 2030, and over the same 25-year period, $4.3 million. And there are no sales tax components to this. Over that time frame, this would equate to about 0.85% of the county's tax base. And the reason I put those numbers all together in one is because that's what the vote would be for. When you're considering this item, we're not agreeing to phase 1 and phase 2 separately. If the URA project is approved by the county and that tax increment financing is approved, it would be for the entire property as it's one parcel. And so, again, at year 25, this would represent, again, a similar amount, 0.87% of the estimated Tabor base in year 25, and a total property tax TIF estimated at $9.2 million. And this is Crystal's.
All right, thank you, Nikki. As the commission knows, this request is in conjunction with a very large business attraction project that our region worked on, and that is a company known as Integris. And so it's important to denote that this request really, and the philosophy behind TIF is, but for us doing this, the project would not come to fruition. And so it has been publicly stated that this level of package of incentives needs to happen to ensure that this Integris project moves forward. And if it moves forward, it will provide extraordinary economic benefit and impact to our region. So you'll denote here that phase 1 would add approximately 600 new jobs over the course of 5 years, with an average wage being just over our annual average wage of approximately $75,000. Additionally, there will be approximately 580 indirect or induced jobs and approximately 4,200 total construction jobs over the course of the development. In addition to the fact that this will generate significant amount of property tax revenues upon the conclusion of the TIF in 2047. Integris is an advanced manufacturing company in the semiconductor arena, so there are also some national security items with a project like this and bringing that back here to our nation. Again, there was a team in the region that worked on this business attraction project with significant support from the governor. Many of you know there was a formal announcement, as this is one of the biggest attraction projects for the state of Colorado in recent years. At this time, I'd like to invite the Executive Director of the Colorado Springs Urban Renewal Authority, Jariah Walker, up, as well as the Chief Economic Development Officer for the City of Colorado Springs, who was instrumental in this business attraction project, to give some further information about the project, the site, and the economic impact.
Thank you, Crystal. Hello, Commissioners. Jariah Walker, Executive Director of the Colorado Springs Urban Renewal Authority. Appreciate you allowing us to be with you today. As usual, I always say it, but you've got an incredible staff to work with. Crystal and Nikki both did a great summary of the project, but I wanted to give you just a quick update on where we're at in the process thus far. Currently, we just went to City Council work session yesterday, and we've already had a work session with Academy School District 20 as well. So I expect this to be through the school district as well as through City Council by mid-February, and then we'll roll that to our final board vote with the Urban Renewal Authority to finalize all agreements at the end of February as well. We're on a very tight timeline with this process. This is probably the quickest URA I've ever put together, but I'll give a lot of kudos to Bob Cope, who's the city's economic development officer, for laying out a lot of the groundwork in advance. So the project has been so far well received by all the taxing entities. I've actually received zero negative feedback about this project or what we're encouraging to do here. So very, very excited for this project and very, very excited to kind of usher it through the process. At this point in time, I do want to also say that the consultants who did all the study work, EPS, Sarah Denmeyer in particular, is online. So if any commissioner has a question about the condition study or how some of these numbers came to, she is available to ask questions too as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and invite up Bob Cope, the Economic Development Officer with the City of Colorado Springs, to break through or to go through this plan, and then we'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to share information and to collaborate today. I will run quickly through this presentation because others have touched on this, and I want to make sure they're not being too redundant here. But just want to add a little bit of context to Project Garnet, or the Integris project, and talk about how the urban renewal designation weaves in to this process. So we've talked about Integris, a international manufacturing company, very instrumental to the microchip process. Publicly traded on NASDAQ, very well capitalized. So we're dealing with a company that is very significant and substantial here. So the community was fortunate enough to have Integris announce their manufacturing center of excellence in Colorado Springs. It's a $631 million investment. Those numbers are easy to roll off the tongue, but that's a very large investment being made in our community, one of the largest I can remember in my 15 years in this business. $280 million of that would be in building and improvements, and $351 million in machinery equipment, furniture, fixtures. So a significant investment there as well. Looking at about a 500,000 square foot facility in phase one, about 600 jobs over the first 5 years, at an average wage of just over $75,000 per year. And again, I just want to emphasize that this was a very competitive project. The company utilized Deloitte Consulting, who was very thorough and aggressive and held us accountable the whole way. And it's really a feather in the cap of the entire community that we were able to have Colorado Springs and El Paso County announced as the successful location. As has been mentioned, there is potential for a significant phase two, basically just a doubling of phase one, which would occur in 2028. The analysis that I'm going to talk about very high level on some of the numbers based on phase one only. Basically, if phase two happens, you can double the impacts. We already talked about the site. Would like to point out that it was previous location of a very large manufacturing facility for a compact computer, and that facility was demolished in 2012. When that demolition occurred, there is significant concrete left over from the foundations that are there. So in addition to the other condition survey and the other blight that needs to be remedied, I believe every one of those pieces of concrete are going to have to be excavated. Again, here's the site for orientation, Ute Valley Park to the south. The white roof is the HP data center that was built in about 2008. The brown roof area there off to the left is an HP office building, and Rockrimmon Boulevard to the north. So the way this project came together is that we all had to collaborate, we all had to contribute to make this happen. So we're looking at incentives from the state of Colorado, El Paso County, the city of Colorado Springs, and Colorado Springs Utilities. The Chamber and ADC also awarded Integris an award out of their deal closing fund. That's a new tool that they have been using this year. And now we're pursuing the urban renewal designation to round out the incentive package. As Crystal mentioned, this has been extraordinary collaboration between all of the partners. Many of you were part of the process. I know Mr. Waters, Mr. Vanderwerth, Crystal, and others participated in site visits and meetings where we had the governor zoom in to a prospect meeting. So unbelievable collaboration to make this deal happen. The company has announced that they will locate the Manufacturing Center of Excellence in Colorado Springs. However, they will not break ground until all the incentives have been finalized. That is the reason why we are on such a tight time frame to get all of these incentives approved and in place, and we're well on our way to doing that. I will let others talk about the specifics of the URA designation, but I will say that in addition to addressing statutory blight, that this will facilitate an extraordinary investment and job creation and contribute to economic growth in our community, and also is necessary to make Colorado Springs competitive with the other cities that were under consideration. Again, I will leave this to others to talk about the various requirements of URA, and I'll hit some very high level numbers regarding economic and fiscal impacts. So my office did a 15-year analysis because we're entering into a 15-year economic development agreement with the company. As you know, the URA has a 25-year amortization period, so The numbers that I'm giving would actually be larger over the 25-year period. But we're looking at about 600 direct jobs, really good multipliers in this industry, which adds another approximately 600 in direct and induced. So we're supporting 1,200 total jobs with phase one. It's a huge construction project, so over the phase one construction period, about 4,200 construction jobs would be supported. And over 15 years, we estimate we'll be adding about $2.2 billion to our economy, or an average of $148 million per year. Noting that that average would be kind of in the middle of the period at the end of 15 years, that's going to be a much larger number. At the end of 25 years, that $148 million is going to be much closer to $200 million per year added to our economy. And again, that is phase one only. Also in our model, we're able to estimate the county sales tax revenue as well. So over a 25-year period of time, we are estimating about almost $13 million in new sales tax revenue to El Paso County, an average of about $500,000 per year. And again, in year 26, that's going to be a much, much larger number. I would also like to point out that there have been questions in the past regarding the amount of the city's participation versus El Paso County's. For phase one, we are estimating that the City of Colorado Springs sales and use tax rebates will be at about $6.6 million payable over that phase one period. And our property tax increment is about 2.2. So our contribution to phase one would be $8.8 million. In the event phase two would happen, that would add about another $7.9 million. So a total of $16.8 million over 25 years for phase one and two. Be glad to answer any questions or turn it back over to the team.
Thank you, Mr. Cope. Are there any questions from the dais for Mr. Cope?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, that does conclude the presentation regarding this item. So as again, we can answer any questions, but as stated earlier, this is a non-voting item, so it was just for information purposes only. At this time, we're planning for the formal voting item to come before the board February 7th.
I think I'll bring it up here for what I'm sure will be a fairly robust discussion, starting with Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you. So I just, I'm kind of interested in, I know that perhaps none of the potentially participating agencies like the school and everything else has not given a final answer yet, but I do have an interest in understanding kind of if you have a sense of their interest. Does it appear to be a positive reaction to this? Or is it kind of, you can't tell, neutral, or what's your sense of where everybody's at?
Great question, sir. So the our last meeting with Academy School District 20, they were very, very supportive of the project, and I actually fully expect this to just be on their consent agenda at their upcoming meeting. This was just an informal for them too, but a chance for them to be able to ask questions. And both the CFO as well as the superintendent of the school district both said it was that there was no downside to this deal, and that they felt it was they were passionate that the board should go forward and vote on it. So far so good with everyone. City Council, I will say we were there yesterday. Same experience of City Council as well. No negative comments or any doubts about supporting the project, and quite the opposite. A lot of people saying how much they supported it and how glad they were able to see it potentially come here.
Okay, thank you. And then another question, or maybe follow-on question is, you know, obviously for what this particular company does, it has the potential of being exceptionally beneficial from the point of view of delivering supply chain materials for IC manufacturers, because that's what they do. They build the precursors for integrated circuitry. So I have to imagine there's conversations going on about, you know, from a community point of view, with Integris here, maybe taking advantage of illustrating to IC manufacturing companies about a growth in the robustness of the supply chain in the area here. So I guess I'm just interested in an understanding that we are talking about that, perhaps at the chamber, the city, and the county, and that if there isn't anything kind of specifically settled on that, but there's something developing about a strategy with regard to that. Is that an accurate statement?
I mean, I would invite the economic development officers to comment on that one.
Thank you. Yes, I would say there's definitely robust conversations to that topic. Additionally, as many of you know, there's the federal legislation known as the CHIPS Act coming out. And so there have been conversations at the state level too, including a task force being set up at the state level and really partnering with manufacturers, specifically Integris, ensuring that we will leverage those federal funds to the state of Colorado and help with our economic development ecosystem. And would most definitely invite Mr. Cope up if you'd like to add anything to these comments as well.
The only thing I would add to that is we have already generated additional interest after the Integris announcement, so we have other people that are considering the community. The other thing I would add is actually today, the Chamber and EDC is undergoing their analysis where they have an outside consultant that is meeting with community and business leaders to talk about the clusters that we are typically pursuing. So I know my input is going to be we absolutely want to pursue more and more high-tech manufacturing, and I would anticipate as a result of that cluster study that will remain one of our targeted industries.
Okay, great, thank you. And then one remaining question, I'm sorry to hog the questions here, but I am interested in, maybe the staff can mention to me, just a refresher on when do we have the intention on placing this up for a vote for the board?
February 7th, I believe.
Correct.
February 7th, okay, thank you. All right, those are my questions, thank you.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. So appreciate you all taking the time to be here today. It's probably not a surprise to any of you. I've been a critic of a lot of these economic development projects, and I do think that it's important for us to have a robust discussion in public about these things. So I'll start off with the things that I'm actually fairly excited about. One of those things is I do think this is important from a supply chain perspective and also as a national security perspective. So I think that is one of the things that is the most, just really the most enticing to me is being able to see some of those problems solved. Certainly the CHIPS Act, that's a very interesting matter that we didn't get to decide at the federal level, but certainly there are pros and cons to that, as we've talked about this morning in regards to some other items, including SNAP benefits. And the one thing that continues to concern me is that government getting involved in the free market often causes lots of different problems. So that continues to be something that concerns me as we look at these projects and we look at how much taxpayer dollar is being put into these projects. I do think that this is a great presentation. We come up here, we talk about how many jobs are going to be created. We talk about all the economic impact that we're going to see. But then on the other hand, tomorrow I'll hear another ask or presentation saying, what are we going to do about our housing shortage? And so we talk about incentivizing jobs and people coming here, but then we create another problem that we have to deal with. And so zooming out and looking at this problem, those are the things that really concern me, is that it's really neatly packaged here, but when we look at all of the other things that come up, it starts to make me go, what are we messing with in the economic sphere that we are not going to be able to solve, or that we're going to have to solve a different problem down the road? I wish we could have a lot more robust discussion about that. I certainly, the URA is in statute and it's there, but it does continue to be a source of concern for me for exactly those reasons. There are a lot of other studies out there. I've talked about them from here before about, are we actually creating new jobs, or are we robbing people from other existing jobs? And then the next thing that I'll hear is we've got a real concern because we have a workforce problem. And those are the things that really pull on me, is the totality of the things that we hear about in our community that start to beg the question, we're creating jobs in one sphere, we're saying we don't have enough workforce in another. We're creating jobs and enticing people to come here, and then I hear we're growing too fast and we can't afford it, we need to raise taxes. Those are the kind of things that really concern me. And again, I'm not an economist. I can certainly read a lot of information out there, and certainly I think it's Thomas Sowell who made the comment that why do we have so many problems in our government? And well, it's mostly because politicians don't really know a whole lot about the economy. So I continue to be concerned about those things, but I do think that this project in particular, especially with its national security implications, especially with the problems that we are facing and the fact that it's only asking for property tax, and we all know how that goes, certainly make this one of the most enticing ones that I've seen. So I do appreciate the time and the efforts coming. Although I am going to also say, when we talk about school boards and library boards, I like to have an honest discussion. You're a great salesman, Jariah. But the reality is it's a little different for school boards. They get some backfill from the state, and so it's not as impactful to them as it is for us. And I just think that those things are important to honestly talk about for our public. Thank you.
Commissioner Williams, do you have any questions or comments?
I actually am very excited to see this project come forward. I consider it more of some people escaping Seattle where perhaps they don't support public safety as much as we do here. And so that would be my only comment. I think it's an excellent project for our community. I'm excited to see this industry come back. I was here when Intel left, and that created a big gaping hole. And while I'm sure you're keeping your Seattle office open, I didn't mean to offend you about Seattle. It's a beautiful place to live, and these are the kind of jobs that would be attractive to my children, and I'm always hoping that something comes up that would move them back here, so that I don't have to worry about moving next to them in my older age. So I really appreciate the project. Looking closely at the numbers, I actually drove by the site on Sunday and looked up and said, oh, there's that site for that project. So I'll have to go up and look at the site a little bit more. But I think it will be an interesting addition to our community and very beneficial economically. I think it does bring in problems of housing and people who are roads would be the one thing that, as people buy the houses further out east, then getting people into town is going to be a continued problem. But I appreciate the work session. Thank you.
I'll have a few comments in just a second, but I also wanted to just clarify something I heard up here. Mr. Cope, I think you might be able to answer this one better. I understand that, as Nikki laid it out to us, phase 1 and phase 2 is kind of all in one vote for us. It's either yay or nay. And then I heard Mr. Cope say, if phase 2 happens. Can I understand a little bit about what things might influence whether phase 2 happens or not? Is it trying to just be efficient with going through this process once? I'd like to just kind of understand that, or if it was just the slip of the tongue.
Thank you for that question. It's my understanding that the company fully intends to move forward with a phase 2, but that will depend on, and again, that would be in 2028, and that would depend on economic conditions and industry conditions at that time. They have fully committed, and they're on a fast track to get started with phase 1. So that's why we did the analysis based on phase 1. But phase 2 would just be a bonus for the community.
Okay, thank you. And those facts and figures we heard about the number of new jobs and whatnot, was that based on both phases to full completion? Thank you, Crystal.
Yes, phase 1 will include approximately 600 jobs. And so I believe phase 2, if happens, is closer to 524, if I'm remembering correctly. But that 600 figure is the figure that we've worked with on building some of, I think, the initial incentives, as well as presentation materials that you saw from your county staff here.
Great, thank you. And I just want to quickly summarize, I know Commissioner Gonzalez also mentioned, hey, this is the kind of project that really should, I think it's somewhat of a no-brainer. I think there's a lot of detail here. And I wanted to thank, really everybody who's been involved with this process for answering questions for really the last few weeks. It went a long way, I think, for our ability to feel like we could ask those and get to a point where we have all the information we need to make good, strong decisions. So I'm going to highlight quickly the information that was given to us internally. I still have your PowerPoint from the other day, which is close to what we just saw as well here. But over 600 new jobs, $75,000 annually to the county, 580 indirect jobs, and over 4,200 construction jobs. That's a significant impact, and so we can look at the charts of estimated value increase and whatnot. But even just those numbers, to me, I like seeing the numbers in terms of not just the financial impact, but those are actually people in those jobs. And so, Commissioner Geithner brings up a good point. Then we've got to figure out all the other systems that take care of those people, right? And the roads that get those people to the jobs that you've brought here. And I think this is a well-planned project. I think it is a no-brainer in terms of a positive impact for our community, and I look forward to being able to cast a vote on that in a few weeks. Are there any other outstanding questions or comments for this work session? Okay. Crystal, do you have any concluding comments?
No, just thank you for the time. And I agree, we have a great process here at El Paso County to ensure transparency with these public work sessions and getting that information out weeks before we take a formal vote. So thank you.
Okay, with that, we will take a quick break between the two work sessions. Is that good with everyone? 5 minutes? I promise it'll be 5 minutes this time. I will call to order now work session number 2. Crystal Latier.
Thank you so much. As a reminder, I'll give my normal disclaimer. This is a work session, a non-voting item, but we're here to merely make a public presentation on a tax increment financing request that the El Paso County has been noticed on. So for this second request, we'll be looking at a project known as Gold Hill Mesa. So the Gold Hill Mesa Urban Renewal Area is located in Commissioner District 3, again. It's comprised of about 19 parcels on approximately 106 acres of land. The development of this will include approximately 550 residential units consisting of both single-family homes, townhomes, and apartments. Additionally, approximately 70,000 square feet of retail space, including a mix of restaurants, bars, general retail, and a grocery store, is being proposed. The project also includes a 100-room or 100-key hotel, and development costs are estimated about $37 million for the public improvement portion alone. So many of you are familiar with the Gold Hill Mesa on the west side of our region. Again, another site location map here for you, as well as a site plan and rendering. And we did want to highlight too, and this was brought up by Commissioner Gonzalez before he had to be excused from the meeting, but the blight designation does not come under the purview of El Paso County. That comes under the purview of the Colorado Springs Urban Renewal Authority and their statute. But the condition study conducted by EPS for this project and approved by the Colorado Springs Urban Renewal Authority found 8 of the 11 qualifying conditions for blight within a project area. And I think many of us are familiar with this project, but it's important to note that this project site is the old Golden Cycle Mill, which has caused pretty significant environmental contamination and has undergone a very robust remediation process and cleanup plan. This project, different from the last, is requesting both 100% of the county's property tax mill levy, as well as 100% of the county's 1% sales tax revenues generated on site. As a reminder, county sales tax is 1.23. The 0.23 belongs to our public safety tax, and so that is never considered within requests. At this time, I'll invite Nikki Simmons.
Commissioners, as Ms. Latier just told you, this project is requesting 100% of both the county's full mill levy and 100% of our 1% general sales and use tax on this project. As I said in the previous work session, as always, your county staff recalculates the amount based on different assumptions that are more in line with our financial forecasts, as well as more detailed information about our mill levy. Temporarily reduced mill levies are used in the URA and the developer's projections, and so we project things with our full mill levy as we anticipate going to that when we're able. And so based on the projections from the assessor's office and the property owner, we anticipate the property tax TIF over the 25 years to be approximately $4.8 million, an average of $193,000 per year. We anticipate the first year we would supply that tax increment financing to be 2026. We are currently collecting about $1,273 currently from that property. We would continue to collect that base plus a 1% or 3% escalation, and that would remain in the county's mill. So then, in addition to that, they're requesting 100% of the 1% sales tax. As our 0.23% public safety tax is not included in any requests that we consider, we project that as if that tax would not sunset and go away during this time period. So this amount is based on if that tax was here during this entire 25 years. The county would retain an additional $1.3 million in public safety tax, while giving approximately $5.8 million for that 100% request of the 1% general tax for an average of $233,000 per year. Over the time frame, that would be just shy of 0.1% of the county's overall taxes in this 1% sales and use tax. So when we combine that amount, the total request from this developer, we anticipate being approximately 10.6 million, 4.8 from property tax and 5.8 from sales taxes. And that's, I think, all I have. Oh, sorry, I thought this was Crystal's slide. It's mine. This property and project is also proposing a metro district to help with its ongoing operations and debt service. They're proposing a total mill levy, which includes a 30 mill levy on the residential, the 20 on the proposed hotel, and 40 mills on their retail. Over the course of that proposed metro district, we anticipate that it would reduce our collection of specific ownership taxes by $270,200, so approximately $7,500 per year. And as a reminder, this is not directly tied to this being a URA project. This would happen whether or not the URA was approved. This is an effect of this becoming an additional taxing district, and because that property would implement a mill levy, they would share in the county's overall specific ownership tax collections. And so overall, based on our projections from your financial services department, this would be just shy of 0.1%, the 0.09% of the county's tax base over the 25-year period. And it would represent 0.07% of the county's tax base in year 25, which would mean we would, once those funds become part of the county's Tabor base in year 26, that's the amount that we would have to absorb within that. It's only a concern if we're already at our Tabor cap, and we wouldn't be able to absorb that back in. And this property is obviously located within the city of Colorado Springs as its URA. And we should receive minimal financial exposure for services needed. We obviously still have services that are required, such as our sheriff's office, public health, human services, things like that.
And then just some additional points regarding the community impacts and the conclusion on that. So the addition of the approximately 770,000 square feet of commercial space will allow for the retail, restaurants, neighborhood services, and businesses to open and provide services to the surrounding area. So again, that would create jobs and increase the sales tax base. While the proposed housing is not subsidized in any way, the addition of the 550 residential units to our housing market would assist with favorably adding more inventory to our supply. So that obviously always supports better market conditions and costs, the more inventory that we can add. And then as stated before, El Paso County will generate a significant amount of property and sales tax revenues upon the conclusion of this TIF in 2047. We also wanted to highlight some of the impacts specific to the public improvements. So you'll denote here, there's a wide variety of public improvements totaling about 37 million. I won't go through each line item, but I know we've had some robust discussion about the open space, trails and parks, and some of the Fountain Creek area that will be restored. And at this time, we'd like to invite the Executive Director of the Urban Renewal Authority, Jariah Walker, up, as well as the project team that will again go into a little bit more detail about the project site, the project, and specific impacts. The board also does have a paper copy of this, which was handed out by the clerk.
Thank you, Crystal, and thank you, Board. Jariah Walker, Executive Director of the Colorado Springs Urban Renewal Authority. A couple quick notes I just wanted to mention. There's two URAs within the Gold Hill Mesa area. There's one, the Gold Hill Mesa residential area was created in 2004, ends in 2029, so that's set to roll off soon. And then this commercial area was actually created in 2015 and goes till 2040. But of course, with economic conditions and some environmental issues that the project team will certainly talk about, that is why we're proposing a new plan, because no development has been able to take place. I will also mention you do have for the vote next time we're in front of you, there'll be a amendment to the Gold Hill residential plan, and that's just because there's a strip of vacant land in these plans that have already been presented that shifts over into this commercial area, but no development has taken place on it, so it's not shifting any tax dollars. So with that being said, we've got a long presentation, well, not too long, but we've got a lot of slides to get through. So I want to bring up the Stephanie Edwards with the project team to talk a little bit about the project and all the environmental cleanup. And then of course, again, Sarah Dunmeyer, EPS, is online as well if there's any questions with the methodology of coming up with the numbers. Stephanie?
Hello. Thank you so much, Commissioners, for having us here today and the opportunity to speak. I know we have just a few minutes and you've already received quite a bit of good data and information. What I want to do is flip through this slide relatively quickly because I know time is limited. I would introduce half our Seattle team here, but that would chump into half of our time. But we do have, speaking of Seattle, some of our key teammates in the audience here who can possibly lend some information during Q&A. I want to start out a little bit by just talking about we're a plan with a purpose over here in Gold Hill Mesa. Essentially, this was a former industrial site, and one thing that distinguishes our urban renewal project from many others is that we have that brownfield overlay, and that essentially requires that environmental cleanup, and we have already proven on the first half of this project that we have diligently revitalized this property environmentally, economically, socially, in a variety of ways. And we intend to continue with that vision as we move into the next phase of the project. This is a little bit, I know you already have this, but looking at past, present, future, there's a very rich and robust history to this property. It was the economic base of Colorado Springs and largely why Old Colorado City and Colorado Springs boomed at the turn of the century. The Golden Cycle Mill was one of the top payrolls in the state, or was the top payroll in the state. And also, it was one of the highest producing gold mills during that period of time nationally, and for a period of time globally. The only reason this mill shut down was due to World War II efforts. And so the whole mill was disassembled, left, as you know, in a blight, and so remained a blight for over half a century. I want to give you just a little bit because we're going to talk about the environmental cleanup portion. So I want to quickly hit upon the history. All the mining was done up in Cripple Creek. There was no mining done at the property. The site was the mill, the Golden Cycle Mill, where the ore was processed. And one of the, I guess, advantages to the type of ore, there's a sulfide-based and oxide-based ore, and this property had largely oxide-based ore. The sulfide-based is what you might see up in Teller County that's more leaching, and so we were fortunate in that it was oxide-based, but the process required a crushing process in a ball mill, and what was left behind essentially was a giant sand pile known as tailings, and that's where you had higher concentrations of metals and minerals that required the cleanup. And so for all those decades, what we had in the heart of our city was a blight that had fugitive dust, erosion. Many of you have been here long enough to recall the scars that fronted the property along Fountain Creek. So we like to believe our team has been a solution, but we have not been able to do this alone. We are very much dependent upon public-private partnership, CHAFA loans, brownfield, and I'll get to that a little bit later. So this TIF and increment financing is very beneficial to the success of this project. Again, just a few points about what was left behind in the barren years, what was left to clean up. This, to me, is one of the most important points. I've heard many of you, Commissioner Geithner made some great points about just that synthesis of workforce and, business growth and economic growth and how that all needs to integrate. So, and then the taxpayer having to take the burden. This site is a great example of the options of doing nothing for perhaps another half century or more, or the government having to clean it up, which then becomes a taxpayer's burden. Or what we're doing is a public-private partnership, which we believe gives us an opportunity to bring a much more high-value contributor to our economic base here locally. I think it was mentioned earlier that this site has 8 of the 11 blight factors, and when only 1 is needed per state statute. So this project well exceeds and is arguably, I just want to say, one of the more deserving and why we're asking for the full 1%. And of course, you've seen all that numbers and all the data. So where do we start? We start with intensive geotechnical evaluations, and we've done this throughout the project. And then we work closely with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, who has issued a voluntary cleanup plan that we follow for the mitigation process. And I'll get into a little bit of explanation of that because I know during your internal meeting, several of you had questions about how do we go about this mitigation process and how does that work? And then I put a couple other points here just about we are bringing 100% net new to this property. Another advantage that we have is that we are not displacing people or structures. Plants or people were not occupying this property prior. So in a way, we're bringing 100% net new to this area. With that in mind, we were able to look in advance and plan in advance and put a fiber optic infrastructure in place, which in other neighborhoods may have to come in and be retrofit. We also had the foresight to take care of some of the Fountain Creek restoration, and we put our stormwater detention pond systems in place before we even started the project. Here's a little diagram of our mitigation process. One thing in the world of mitigation that an environmental cleanup that we're somewhat proud about is that we have not exported anything from this property because essentially it was all naturally occurring crushed rock, essentially with higher concentrations of metal and minerals. The CDPHE came up with a plan where we can do a mix of 60% native new soil with 40% of the tailings. And essentially what that does is redistributes the content to where arsenic, for example, which is one of the 3rd most naturally occurring elements in soils around here, we essentially put back to the baseline of the area. So nothing has to be exported from the property, and we're able to mitigate in place. And with each time we mitigate a filing, we have a no action determination, multiple layers of inspection, experts, geotechnical reports. And anyway, again, you are welcome to ask further questions as we go along. I just want to breeze through this quickly. We also invested in 2010 a cleanup of our stream, and as water becomes more and more an important topic, we're really proud to have a mile-long stretch of Fountain Creek that borders our property and Highway 24. And so in 2010, we did this incredible cleanup of the stream. We were able to pull tailings out of the stream that for years of urbanization had caused obstruction and braiding of the creek. So Gold Hill Mesa, CDOT, and Stormwater Enterprises came together and did this cleanup back then. I heard mention of concrete earlier. I'm going to show you, demonstrate just how much mitigation we've had to do with concrete. It's a bit of an optical illusion when you drive past the property unless you go down on it. And I know some of you have actually been on the property, but not only did we have a huge amount of the old mill beds and concrete from the mill beds to excavate, but we also had over 600 and some thousand cubic yards of concrete that was dumped there in the 80s at a time where a former owner of the property didn't know what to do with it, and so just welcomed, all the lots of rebar, lots of concrete. And so over the past 18 to 20 months, we have been working on site preparation diligently. I think some of you were out there to see those concrete piles, and that was an extensive and costly undertaking. We have some examples, 3 football fields worth of concrete, or a mile of concrete into the air. What is your data? It's really cool.
So 600,000 cubic yards is a tough number to kind of visualize, but if you actually take an acre of land and you go vertically up into the air 370 feet, that's how much volume 600,000 cubic yards is.
Mm-hmm. We talked to Concrete Couch about coming out to do a project, but I mean, even that was more concrete than they could work with. So here's a little example of our excavation. So when I say we're excavating our history, both figuratively and literally, it was just a huge undertaking, and just the equipment alone, we were at a burn rate of about $15,000 a day for several months. So the cost is incredible just to do the site prep to bring us to ground zero where we can even begin the conversations about ever going vertical. Massive undertaking. Footings that were the size of semi-trucks to pull out of the ground. And here's a look at the smokestack, and I think you're all very familiar. Second to Pikes Peak, this smokestack occupies the skyline of Colorado Springs. And you know, when I give you a little bit about that history of the mill, it's really something to be celebrated. We're very proud of it, and not to omit from our history books, which did happen for quite a while. And I've had some words with the Pioneers Museum about that. So we're hoping to really celebrate this history. And so we have decided, and I think this is the first time publicly we've been able to mention that we are going to preserve the smokestack. It took a lot of cost analysis to make that determination. It was essentially going to cost as much to take it down as to restore it, but then you have to find a way to maintain it in perpetuity. And so that was the real factor we've been looking at. And so when we look at Metro District designations and just some mechanisms to put into place to be able to just celebrate and preserve the smokestack in perpetuity. So we're pretty proud. That work is actually going to start very soon. We're under contract with a company that's going to start. You'll see people crawling around up there starting to do some work on the stack. And so Gold Hill Mesa today, the existing Gold Hill Mesa as you know it, is essentially complete with 627 households, filings 1 through 10. We're very proud of having taken this blighted site, activated quite a bit of open space and pocket parks, planted over 2,000 trees. And as you probably know, we have a very active community center where we do a lot of social good. Almost everything we do there benefits a worthy charity that has a broader social impact citywide. And we've even done some really wonderful things with the county in partnership with our partners in the park, which we have always valued. And I think we're going on, I want to get the number before I came in here because I know we're celebrating that tomorrow in the same space, but I think we've been 6 or 7 years partners in the park. And we do consider our location and our proximity, one of the true values and benefit is being so close to those county parks. And so we have regularly, really, and thank you, benefited from that relationship. So now that we've completed half the project, we can really take a look at the juxtaposition. And had I had more time, I was going to show you a drone overview. It's kind of a neat time in our development to take a look at what complete looks like juxtaposed with what the true blight looks like. And it's, looks like a moonscape essentially. And so this area also looked like a moonscape when we got a hold of it. Again, no structures, not inhabited by plants or people. So again, we're fulfilling a vision for the city. We're meeting a lot of that criteria with Plan COS and hopefully for the county as well. You already saw this map. If you want to get a little more detailed into the plan itself, happy to do so during Q&A. And I know we've invited some of you out and we look forward to hosting on the property because I think you can get a real, rather than me stand here and show that, tell about this, I'd rather show you in person. So welcome you out to the property so you can just lay eyes on what we're doing here and what the future vision is going to be. We have quite a bit of grade we have to work with. That's also a contributing factor to the extraordinary expense and complexity of this project. But we have some really neat things planned. Again, our vision continues in this new phase of the project where we are engaging community. We are making a pedestrian-friendly area. We're activating parks and gathering spaces, and we are actually, speaking of bringing an amphitheater or music park online, we've already hosted an outdoor music program, Music on the Mesa, for going on 15 years now, successfully in our little central park, and now we would like to give it a proper home, down the hill, and it's also a way to honor and celebrate the smokestack. And so this amphitheater would be near and around the smokestack, and it would be relatively small. Right now we're seeing sometimes 2,000 people. At our Partners in the Park Fall Harvest Festival, we had about 2,000 people. So we're thinking this amphitheater will be 2,000 to 3,000. So nothing extraordinarily large. I think you've already seen this in your packet, but this is a description of the residential retail product that we intend to bring online. Here's a milestone, a projected timeline. Of course, market conditions could move this slightly, but right now we're on target for meeting these deadlines. The whole project concept plan has been already approved by the city. We have our geotechnical plan, our geotechnical report already in place. CGS has reviewed that. So we're very much on track. A little bit about the financing, and I know you saw all the numbers and your team did a deep dive, your CFO, but I just want to point out that the difference when you have that brownfield overlay is the capital stack it's no longer a stack. It's more like a waterfall because you cannot get the same kind of conventional lending as you would on a conventional project. That's considered too much of a risk. So we have to fill that gap. We're very much reliant upon some of those public sources, the TIF being one of them. Very thankful for the URA thus far and all they've been able to do. And again, I think we've proven what we've been able to execute and activate for the community with the already completed Gold Hill Mesa. Again, a few more numbers. The developer is certainly committed and invested, and you've heard about the but-for term, and I definitely, we are committed to completing this project, but it will not have quite the same impact, and we will not be able to fulfill the vision in full with all the public areas that we'd love to provide without the support of those TIF dollars. This is an example of the parks that we've already activated. Some of the programs were very much oriented in utilizing our community center for the public good. And so we are continuously doing projects that benefit citywide. The goal of a project like this is to fit into the fabric of the city, to relieve some of the vehicular burden, and to not have to build housing so far out of town, as you were speaking about earlier, that it just overburdens the highways and the workforce has nowhere to live. So I'd like to think we're somewhat of a solution for Integris. We're in close proximity, or those kind of businesses coming to town. At one point, we had this future project that we're talking about now was going to be entirely commercial. And having this mixed use approach is giving a lot of forward thinking to integrating the businesses and the residential and so forth. But now, because our city has much more need for housing and the retail market has had a big hit, we have squeezed down the retail portion and increased the residential portion. So we think we have a pretty good mix in our current plan. A little bit of our social impact. Partners in the Park, very proud of this. Real pictures from, our whole neighborhood has participated in their Bear Run, Happy Trails fundraiser. And then we've hosted, and we intend to bring it back, the Fall Harvest Festival. Went dormant for a couple years during COVID, but we were proud to have raised enough money to help purchase a microscope for the Nature Center. And so we've been really thankful to you and proud of that partnership, and we will continue doing that no matter what. Thank you. Any further questions? "30 seconds.
I have one question.
Commissioner Williams.
My question is, actually, I know that you had initially when the project started some press about the tailings and houses on the tailings. The mitigation you do, does that make it so that it's safe for families to live on the tailings there?
Well, absolutely. And that, Gold Hill Mesa has always been subject to press. And I think the articles you're talking about were just in 2019, which was kind of odd timing since there had been proven success of the neighborhood. We already had, I want to say, 500 and some households at that time. And really there was some misinformation without diving into that. But when you do come out and visit, we can go deeper into those articles and where there were some fallacies. And I had written a response to all of those points that were made there. But yes, there are two components. There's the environmental cleanup, and that's first and foremost. That is the biggest priority citywide. So when you have a blight with environmental contaminants blowing around for half a century, most important for us and CDPHE collectively was to clean that up environmentally. So that was taken care of and capped right away, generally, from the fugitive dust going around. We've drill seeded and hay crimped the hillside, so that erosion didn't continue. But then as far as the mitigation process I mentioned to you, not only solves the the environmental concern first and foremost, but also helps address the geotechnical component. And that was really what those articles were supposing, that there was a, and I say supposing because it absolutely wasn't fact-based. So the geotechnical side of this, we are so well reviewed by not only the CDPHE, but multiple layers of geotechnical engineers and professionals. And we even had a peer review done at that time just to validate. Now, when all the home builders, and we've had 7 out there, purchase the land, they bring their own engineers out to test the lots that they purchase, further validating the land and its stability. So stability was the factor that came up most often, but the environmental concern has not been a concern for a very long time. That had to be cleaned up first and foremost.
And I think the articles I remember were way back in 2004, so.
2004, yes.
When
so
you
that's-
first started, I remember something back then.
Right, because I think that the property had set as a blight for so many years, and there was a lot of, I'll say mistakes, some warranted, some not, around that property because nothing grew on it. Why? Because when you have soil that's not nutrient rich anywhere in Colorado, or anywhere, nothing's going to grow on it. But I think when the discussion started happening about the intention to build on this property, yes, the press took great interest, as they should, and hopefully we've been incredibly transparent. And sometimes you don't know what questions are out in the world. When the articles hit in 2019, we thought all those questions had been answered by a multitude of experts. So we're always an open book. We started a seminar series based on some of those articles just to address every question that arose out of that. But yes, initially when they were starting the project, there was a lot of question because it's a massive undertaking on a variety of fronts. And I think it was legitimate for the press to ask questions when it started.
Yes, and I wanted to say, so I really appreciate your use of taking a brownfields and converting it, because I know 2 instances. I remember one time when someone called and asked about the garbage dump south of the Penrose Hospital on Woodman and Powers. And there's a garbage dump there and how much it would cost to clean up. But also, too, the garbage dump from when I was a child now actually has a high school and probably 10,000 houses on it. And I think those are important projects that, have to happen to clean up the environment where there have been garbage dumps in the past. So, or gold mill sites. So.
Well, at the turn of the century, we're in the Industrial Revolution. So there's a lot of blight left over. And if you come from back east or you spent time back east or Pittsburgh and places like that, repurposing the land, essentially upcycling the land, is really a responsible thing to do when it's done right. It can help, again, bring a population density back to an area where it's needed, therefore saving green field from being unnecessarily developed. So there is a bigger purpose to this type of development, and hopefully everyone recognizes that without this effort and without the commitment of this development team, we might still be looking at blight or something that taxpayers would have to take on the burden. So we are looking at continually improving as we move down the hill, keeping a lot of what's good about Gold Hill Mesa today and only setting forth to improve it. Some of these parks and open space, very important to us, because in order to bring the homes with a higher density, we want to still have shared pocket parks and spaces, and we have opportunity for some trails, and I think you've read some of that in our notes that we sent over. But we have had conversations with county parks, because we're in such close proximity, about maybe doing some little satellite parks on our property or looking for ways to do trail connectivity. I mean, it really is an interesting little parcel and a little bit of an island over there, but we are working to expand a bit of highway or 21st Street, and we're kind of catty corner, and our residents regularly go over to the dog park, and we have put into place crosswalks before to help with people getting across that busy highway. So we're certainly open to continuing discussions about how to connect and improve and integrate with the parks along there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Vanderwerf?
Yes, thank you. So kind of a couple questions. First off, thanks for the history context. 480,000 pounds of gold, not 480,000 ounces, but 480,000 pounds. Man, that is a lot. And I didn't know that. So that's kind of fascinating, isn't it? So I actually appreciate putting a little of the historical context in here. And that is a little bit of the legacy of the region that we live in. Now, there's a map in the charts that you had, and I wanted to ask a few questions about that, and then I've got some other questions. But I think in a previous map, I saw what appeared to me at least, and maybe I was mistaken, but what appeared to me is either the property or some property right was conveying across Highway 24. Was that an error? Because I don't see that in this map.
Yeah, that was an error on the part of EPS. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, not really an error, but with EPS, we actually instruct them to include all public improvement rights of way within the area, just as good practice, because as our attorney will say, when we're applying TIF to anything, we want to make sure that we're including those public rights of way as areas that are eligible for the reimbursement through TIF. And so generally speaking, general practice, when this was created, EPS had done that, but your final map of what the boundary will be is embedded within the legal description of your plan. That is the governing document that guides what the boundaries of this will be, to answer your question.
So the legal description will not include anything going across the highway, is that correct?
Correct.
And then the map here does show one section, there's a black line, but I'm not 100% sure what the black line means. That might be the property line, but in the southeast side, it's south of Fountain Creek, and then the northwest side, it's north of Fountain Creek. So what does that line mean? It's on the chart.
Yeah, let me bring our planner, John Olson. We had sent an updated map, and you may not have seen it because I think we sent it on Friday just to kind of delineate. Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think I know what he's talking about.
Okay.
John Olson, planner, also on the Urban Renewal Authority, by the way. A little bit of a fun side of this, but I think the black line you're referencing, it kind of zigzags from the highway, and that's the actual property designation. So the line kind of includes part of Fountain Creek, then it goes south.
So the northwest part of the property includes Fountain Creek, and the southeast part, it's still a north side of the line, but the southeast part of the north line is not including the creek. So is this the part where the creek is embedded? Is that is property owned by the developer?
City of Colorado Springs. The part that is in, yes, the developer owns part of Fountain Creek.
A part of Fountain Creek.
Yeah.
Okay.
It kind of doglegs, and frankly, we're working with the city right now. We're trying to, since we did the restoration, there's been a lot of good and bad with the Fountain Creek, bringing that whole ecosystem back. We now have quite an extensive beaver issue down there, and you can see they're creating dams, and even if you're driving along Highway 24, interesting things are happening. So it's time to kind of revisit where and how to clean up the stream. And we regularly do stream cleanup with our residents for what we can do with, Fountain Creek, Creek Week pickup. But we're going to have to get inside the stream and do some cleanup. And so we're talking with city about how to go about it. And what's odd is there is that dog leg that John just described, where part of it's our property, part of it's the city. So it's a little bit complicated. But that black line, I think, illustrates that dog leg where our property ownership and the city property ownership
I'll tell
begins
you
and ends.
why I take a little bit of an interest, and I'm not saying that this would end up being an issue here, but across that entire Highway 24 corridor, there's a mishmash of easements and ownership, privately owned, CDOT easement, city-owned, county-owned, and it has actually been one of the causal factors for homeless camps along that corridor. So I kind of saw this line, and it's like, oh my gosh, are we going to actually contribute to that a little bit here by kind of having, a mix of ownership and things like that? And that isn't necessarily something that I would be asking you to solve, but it is one of the challenges we've had in this area, because when it comes to you get a homeless camp, then you want to go through the process of cleaning it up. You got to go down to the GIS data to find out who actually has the jurisdiction on that property. And then either, maybe go through a legal proceeding for a private owner to address it. And then sometimes the camps are halfway in private and halfway in public, and it's been tough.
Well, we have had to deal with that head on because when we started our work, our extensive work, it's simply not safe. And we understand the sit-lie rules, and you're absolutely correct. On our property, our facilities manager has gone down and requested and, taken the approach of just informing encampments that come along there that we're doing some work. It's not safe. But then on the city side, the city's been very responsive to supporting, our efforts. And there's also this year a few fires that were worrisome. And the city's been incredibly responsive and collaborating with us on that effort. And we certainly see a lot of what you're describing, and we attempt to handle it in a collaborative way, in a humane way.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And I just know that seeing that crossing of lines, that we just need to be cognizant of trying to not produce more complexity, thereby making it even harder to deal with. And then I just want to kind of comment and make sure I understand this, because it was very interesting to me. So you, in part of the replacement of soils, this 60% topsoil importation with 40% of the natural soils there that have arsenic was agreed to with CDPHE to produce a mix that delivers a natural arsenic level. Did I hear that correctly?
I'd say, a baseline level.
Okay.
And so, arsenic is one of those scary bad words until you kind of look at that it is the third most naturally occurring element in soils. If you go to the Pagosa Hot Springs, you're going to see it's a naturally occurring element. It is not a synthetic, like a jet fuel that Stapleton had to have men in bubble suits take away and put somewhere else and make it somebody else's problem. So yes, the intensive studies geotechnically that went on out there to come up with that mix.
No, I'll just say that I think I appreciate that level of sophistication. It's not a process here that seems the agreement that you have with CDPHE is not a process here to just eliminate arsenic, but actually to try to remediate it to a natural arsenic level. That's kind of interesting. I hadn't heard anybody talk about that before. So a couple other questions, but you've probably had to answer these a lot, but I'm just going to ask them. It's a public forum, so I'm interested in the answers. So I do get the sense that there's been an enormous amount of work done here with regard to reducing environmental risks, dealing with EPA requirements and those kinds of things. But from time to time we have seen in other parts of the country, not necessarily here in the Springs, but in other parts, where we thought we were doing everything that was right, and then later on we found out that there was an insufficient amount of remediation, and then had to go back and do more remediation. That was very expensive because the land had already been developed and was a royal pain. So I'm just asking, what level of confidence do we have in, maybe not having to come back to this? In other words, doing this once and for all the right way, first time, so that we don't then find ourselves having to go into some form of remediation later. So what level of confidence do we have on that?
Yeah, and I might call some of our technical experts up here, but I can assure you that if anybody wants this, is incentivized for this to be done well and right, it is the development team. And so we believe, chosen and been relying upon some of the top geotechnical experts who put their stamp every time there's a geotechnical report. And then we went a step further when some of those questions came up. And, we didn't put our head in the sand and ostrich on this. I mean, when the Gazette raised those questions, the first thing we said is, well, I'll just put it this way. I shook every tree and turned over every rock and asked every question. You have contractors and subcontractors, and then you have builders, and they have their contractors and subcontractors. But I can tell you there's no more well-studied piece of property environmentally and geotechnically, and to mitigate it to the highest of standard that will serve generations to come. We go all the way down to bedrock. There is bedrock under there. It's not a sinking sand pit, as was somewhat displayed, but the experts who are willing to put their stamp, not just one, but 6 on the geotechnical report for filing 11 alone, gives us great confidence. And as I said, we got a peer review, yet another engineering firm to come out and revalidate what the already well-regarded engineering firm had done. So I might call Rylan Hoffman up to speak to that a little further. Rylan's out of our Seattle office. He's our CFO, but also quite a bit involved in this geotechnical piece, development
in the
piece.
technical aspect.
Yes.
I think you covered it well, Stephanie. I mean, I think one of the things that we do as a development entity is to cover our bases well, both from a PR perspective and just.
We're going to need to get a microphone extension, I think.
Sorry about that.
We have a little here.
Sorry about that. I think, like I said, Stephanie, I think covered it pretty well. But one of the things, we don't want to get into a situation where, you know, we're not putting a good product out there that's going to last forever. And one of the ways we do that is by engaging with multiple consultants to make sure we're not fooling ourselves going with one outfit. And so those folks are putting their professional opinion and their technical expertise, laying it out for us. And so if we get multiple opinions and they all say the same thing, that's a good reassurance and on our part that we should actually move forward with these kinds of projects. And so we've continued to stick with one or two main consultants, but also bring in other folks to be like, hey, you agree with this too. And we also are selling product to professional home builders, professional contractors who don't want to come onto a site unless it's been well vetted, and they bring in their own expertise. So there are the diversity of consultants and technical experts involved add to the broad base of technical knowledge about the site. And that gives us the confidence to proceed at the beginning of the project and continue developing the project as we have for 20 years. If we didn't want to, if we had any hesitation whatsoever, we wouldn't proceed with this next phase, but we don't. So,
and don't get me wrong in the questions. I mean, to be frank, I deeply appreciate the developer's willingness to take on a challenge like this. Having said that, there's still things to, make sure that we can have kind of public confidence in what's happening and so forth and so on. That's why I feel it's important I've got to be asking these questions.
Well, and we have, those reports are on public record every time we get the geotechnical report, the summary. Again, I published some of those earlier, but you are absolutely welcome at any time to come over and have access to those. Some of them are, quite extensive, but there's always a summary and you can kind of look at and vet for yourself the experts that have been behind that. And again, we're not going anywhere. This is not a grab and go type of a development situation. Notice I've been there 15 years. Rylan, most of our team has been here a very long time, and we're probably going to be here at least another 5 years to decade. So we're not going to cut bait and run from this project. We're committed, we're invested, and we office right in the heart of the community, which is kind of unusual for a developer to do. So.
Thank you, and I appreciate the chair's indulgence in my asking a range of questions, but this was kind of an interesting project and kind of finishing this out. So just a couple left. You did mention the land stability, and you know that there's obviously been in the past some public criticism of the current development with regard to land stability. And I believe that was properly adjudicated at the time, but again, just for the public record, could you provide some statements about that? Because there were some accusations, but I think it was, whatever was found was maybe normal settling or whatever, but could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so some of the accusations that were made, first of all, had to do with the FEMA homes that were well documented, that were kind of along the Front Range West Side area. At Gold Hill Mesa, again, we're more business to business. We're very community focused, and we are masters of the vision, or not masters, but we're the planners of the vision for the community. But again, this land is prepared geotechnically, tested and reviewed for things like stability, and I might call Rylan back up to help answer this. But the fact is, we're kind of business to business transactionally because we sell these lots then to builders. And these builders are incentivized to come in and test the heck out of it, just like if you were to go buy a house and you need to have it inspected. And so for that, it's been tested and tested. We did have some issues with some homes, like any new home development has, where the perimeter drain of the home was breached in some way. And there's been, over the life cycle of the project, a few of those. There's been one incident in recent months where a home had a basement flooding issue, not due to settling or instability, but because of an underdrain that had a clog in it and backed up. But we have had no homes to date in the, there is no home that's ever had a diminution of value to their property based on structural damage. Has there been a couple basements flooded due to perimeter drain breach, either a rock when the builder built the home crushed the perimeter drain, and we've now documented every case of that. When the Gazette raised those articles, we set forth to say, okay, where are these homes that are having problems? There were none of the magnitude of what was being alleged, but any home that had ever had a perimeter drain breach, and out of our 7 builders, there were 2 builders that had that problem, and it had a lot to do with how the perimeter drain was installed. And believe me, this happens in any new neighborhood. You can see perimeter drains that have had issues and have to be replaced, but none that caused structural damage to the extent, plus all these homes are under foundation warranties through their builder for 10 years. And again, our first homes were built, I want to say, losing track of time, about 12 years ago. So I don't know if I answered your question or if I need to get some more technical expertise up here.
No, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then the one last question, it's kind of 2 parts. So first of all, I think I appreciate that there's a component here of commercial development. And so, but, you know, I didn't realize that there was going to be an amphitheater. So the commercial, I'm kind of interested in, maybe it's open to any type of commercial, but is it going to be predominantly like retail, I guess, or is it going to be more like office space? And then on the amphitheater, I guess that'll be available to the public so the public can come, but I didn't, it might have been even a preliminary plan, so it doesn't have all the details, but in that one drawing, I didn't really see like, where would you park 2,000 people?
Yeah.
So
okay, I want to back up and add one more thing to the question about the stability factor.
Okay.
During that time, the county assessor spoke in the Business Journal and was quoted that the property values in Gold Hill Mesa at that time went up higher than anywhere else in the countywide, and no one had contacted county assessor with a diminution of value. So that's documented by, that's a good indicator that those level of problems didn't exist. So I just wanted to say,
thanks.
Yes. Yeah. As far as the type of retail, we have modified that. I mean, prior to a global pandemic, the retail market was seeing a lot of hits from e-commerce and just the natural evolution of the whole digital disruption. So we were already reevaluating, adapting our site. Kind of having these delays have in some way been beneficial because we've been able to adapt, we think, to a plan that's much more sustainable in the future, and that we're not going to be looking at empty, vacant, giant box stores. And frankly, our concept has always been to have smaller footprint down there. At one time, you were told you had to have one of the top big 7 box stores to anchor a retail center. And so we've gone through a few iterations, but where we've landed today is in our mixed use, zoning. We have the opportunity to adapt. And so we've adapted, bringing online more housing. And now we're having more experiential restaurants, retail, entertainment, and no longer are we planning to have office space or office complexes. And I think COVID kind of extended that. And having the fiber optic infrastructure we put in, we were already thinking not of a global pandemic happening, but just people being able to work from home and having that fully synchronous fiber connectivity to their home. And so that's become very beneficial. And John Olson might even talk with you about some envisioning where in some of the project where there could possibly be an opportunity for people to have their small business out of their home. But we're not planning any big office retail space. Again, we might serve something like Integris and the population they're bringing with housing and restaurants and entertainment opportunity. And possibly a grocer. We're still very hopeful that that can happen. So anyway, I don't know if that answered.
Well, no, that answers that area. And then the question on the amphitheater.
Yeah, the amphitheater. So interestingly, what's a little bit different in our case is we've been doing Music on the Mesa for almost 15 years, and it's grown exponentially over time. So we are seeing or more of people coming to these concerts that go, it's grown from just over the summer. Well, it was a September series. Now it's over the summer and starting as early as, I want to say May for the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb kickoff concert. And so we have street-side parking. That's something a little bit unique about this T&D type zoning we have. And so when we attract about 2,000 people, like we did for the Fall Harvest Festival that we did jointly with the county, people can park. It's interesting when you're built on a grid like we are and you have street-side parking, that parking situation, and we put it to the test. We already have test case for 15 years of, hosting these things. So that solves a lot of the parking burden. And again, this amphitheater, we're calling it Music Park because we realize amphitheater, we have a couple pro formas and we're looking at how to structure the amphitheater, whether it's just going to be another parcel of grass with some seating, or how it's going to be designed is in discussion at the moment. But we expect it's going to hold a maximum of, say, 2,000, 2,500. There may be some overflow into some park area where people can bring their picnic blankets like they do today or lawn chairs. But as far as any concern for sound, I think parking, we're going to handle it in much the same way. John Olson can speak a little to that. We're looking at flex parking, shared parking with other areas, and also street side parking like we already do. And again, we're not going to be accommodating much more than we're already accommodating with the music series. Sound-wise, we're using, we have in mind a lot of landscape architecture, and where it's going to be situated is frankly further removed from the interior, the residential area than it already is. So, we're pretty hopeful that it's going to be successful given that we already have a proven track record of, hosting these concerts.
Great, thank you.
Just to add on to that real quick, I think Stephanie's being a little bit humble in terms of what she's created with Music on the Mesa. I'm also a resident of Gold Hill Mesa, so I've lived there since 2015. And seeing the growth of the Music on the Mesa series and the number of people who come to watch these concerts, which I highly encourage you to come to in the summer. It's a free concert. I live 4 blocks from where the community center is today, where the concerts sit. And at no time, even when we've had 2,000 plus people attending that, at no time we've had parking actually get, I think about 2 blocks is where I kind of watch it. Because as a planner, I wonder the same thing, right? Because we don't necessarily want to provide these empty parking fields that feel like, why is that there? When you're talking about 95% of the time. So we've studied that and kind of looked at where people park, how they park, and if there's an issue with it. We have not found an issue. The residents love the series. We have 630 homes currently in Gold Hill. So if you do the math, that's about, 1,500 people? We're adding an additional 550 to that. So we're going to be close to a population of 3,000 people in Gold Hill, which is pretty staggering, right? So with the new design and the new layout and where we're kind of moving it, we're trying to centralize the music park in the overall neighborhood, but then also utilize the streets and have angled parking on the streets. So we're adding more capacity on a daily basis. So we're really excited about that. So that's the balance of how big do you make the music park? Because you could make it really big, but then we'd have to have a big parking lot, right? Like the one that's happening up at, I can't think of what it's called now, Copper Ridge, Polaris Point, sorry, thank you. Which is really exciting for the city of Colorado Springs and El Paso County to have that kind of venue. But you're gonna have these big fields of parking that go along with that. So at Gold Hill, we're trying to stay away from that.
Thank you.
I apologize. I just want to add, because I think your 2 questions as it relates to what is the retail going to look like and also what does the music park or in the parking look like are really tied together. And if you look at the map, along Broadway Point is where we have a lot of our retailers and a lot of ideas to have food and beverage type concepts. So you're up there, you're overlooking both downtown Colorado Springs and everything in the panoramic view, including the mountains. But you also have a lot of parking in that area. And some of the ideas, you actually have a walking path that goes from the commercial area to the music park. And so part of the vision is being able to come with your family, come eat at a restaurant, and also be able to walk to the music park and catch a show, with a smokestack there. And it's also surveyed and aligned with Garden of the Gods. And so you're kind of bringing it all together. It's a lot of what Colorado Springs and some of the heart there is of what we're trying to bring as far as the community goes.
And I do want to add to that because that's actually a really exciting part. As a landscape architect in the design of that, I don't know what slide number or page number it is, but you can see a graphic that we've sketched up. And we really want to make that promenade space very special. Gentle slopes, nice sidewalk, a nice space for people to walk, but we also want to really celebrate it in the details of the landscape. And if you look at it in a bigger picture, you can actually see that we've designed a guitar neck into that. So we want people to experience that, but as commissioners, as a part of this project, that's a really cool part of it that people are going to experience. So if you can imagine walking this promenade, I'm going to geek out for a minute, and having the guitar strings going overhead kind of as a lattice, right? And seeing the frets of the guitar in the paving, that's kind of the design feature that really celebrates that. And we're really excited about it. And those details are going to really bring it all together.
I'm glad you brought that up because I saw that in the drawing and I wasn't quite sure what that was, but now I know what it is. Thanks.
It is hard to see, the renderings, and just really imagine them coming to life. But again, we already have proof of concept with success on this concert series. And just to note, Music on the Mesa and Art on the Mesa was kind of inspired just from studying urban renewal and taking very seriously some of those principles, is to not only restore the environment and the economy, to also bring to life some of those more value add of the arts. And so we're going to maintain that. We partner with Cottonwood Center for the Arts, and we rotate a art exhibit out of the community center, and we'll continue with some potential sculpture gardens and doing some special things. We'd love to do something really special with the Stack, potentially, art installations, and just make this a really special place.
Great. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I first just want to remark on the genuine enthusiasm from this group. It is obvious that that you have a love for this project and a love for this community, and so that's really neat to see. And also on the comments around, how geotechnically sound, I think that those are great questions, and they certainly, it sounds like you've done a lot of due diligence. This is not something that is glossed over. It is very clear that you have put a lot of attention into that. And again, that makes sense considering the enthusiasm and like I said, the love that I truly feel for this, that you guys all have for this project. On that point, I guess I would say there's no guarantee on anything, right? We all know that. It sounds like you've done absolutely as much due diligence as you possibly could on that. We know that things change all the time. In the world, we learn about new contaminants, we learn about all kinds of things, yet it sounds like you have done absolutely as much as that you can at this point. So I don't have any concerns around there. I also want to say thank you to the URA for bringing us a project that I absolutely feel like fits into that blight category really, really well. So thank you for that. That makes it a whole lot easier for me. I am going to say, however, and again, a lot of this is not because you need to hear it from me over again, but because we're in a public forum and I want the public to hear the whole robust conversation on this. I still struggle just a little bit, even on a project like this, with this conversation around infrastructure and whose responsibility it is on that and the 100%. And we often talk about, hey, this isn't really going to affect county services. We don't have these roads. These aren't things that we have to take care of. But some of the smaller things that just came to mind as I was just kind of listing out a few things. We have to mail ballots to people. We have to serve them with DMV services. We have to record documents. And obviously most of that, we're talking about over in the clerk and the recorder in the assessor's office and things like that. But those are things that we have to fund. So we do have costs that will come as a result of this. That's why it's so hard for me to get to that 100%, because we do have costs. It is going to cost us something. And where does that end up getting shifted? That's on every other taxpayer that lives outside of that environment. So that continues to be something that is very difficult for me to figure out how, when we have a very lean budget and we want to make sure that we provide great services, that we're, dipping into those things. So there's no way that there's a net negative, in my opinion, impact to the county budget. There is some of that. So that continues to be something that I am balancing. But again, I do really appreciate this project. It is very clear that this is certainly an area that will benefit our entire community by being cleaned up and turned into something really beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from up here? Any other comments?
Just definitely valid points that Commissioner Geithner just made. And one thing that we believe in cleaning up a project of this magnitude is kind of what we like to call a little bit of a halo effect to that area. Understanding those costs are very real and quantifiable that you mentioned, but also hoping this is somehow mutually beneficial and that by undertaking the urban renewal site of this complexity, that somehow we will have an impact in areas around us and to kind of help increase property values and maybe have just an overarching impact with a little more increase to that tax base even beyond our borders. We hope, we can't quantify that, but that just is one of the theories and hopes, when you clean up a site that has that level of blight. Thank you for your time.
Excellent presentation. Thank you. Anything else from staff? Okay.
No additional information from staff. We just wanted to remind you there's no vote necessary today. It's just a work session. And we'll be back also with this item on February 7th.
Okay, so both of the work sessions we had today will be action items on February 7th.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to extend a thank you to Stephanie and team who have invited the commissioners out to see the project. I am sorry that can't work within a time frame tomorrow, but I will be at the URA board, which I think is important, I think, for this commission to have to utilize that spot on the URA board, and I look forward to doing that. With that, I will close this work session out. We do have an informal meeting, and if everybody's okay with it, let's plan on not starting that any earlier than noon. Okay, thanks.